registration table. They will be emailed to all delegates, so you will be able to get a copy. Also, quite soon this will be uploaded onto the framework site as well. So we're very open, everything on the site is free, and you are absolutely welcome to download things and go for them. I'm going to do this in two parts. I want to show you the framework, but I also want to discuss how you might showcase it within your setting. So some of you are in a school-based setting, some of you are responsible for professional development activities, some of you might want to offer training events to a wide variety of people. So my aim is twofold, and that's to show you the site, but also give you some ideas about how you might go ahead and use it. Although I'm not Julie Logan, I did go and listen to the video that she had. And what she found is that among the group of entrepreneurs, somewhere between 20% to 35% are dyslexic. So that means that amongst your group of entrepreneurs, you've got a higher proportion of people with dyslexia than in the general population. So the general population is about 10%, but amongst entrepreneurs it's between 20 and 35%. Interestingly, on the other side of the scale, if you look at the statistics on young offenders, or in fact offenders in general, the Home Office statistics state that 57% of offenders have qualifications or literacy abilities lower than level 1 in terms of adult qualifications. So that's 57% of people with reading and writing skills below GCSE grade D to G. So that got me thinking. Seems to me that the difference between somebody with dyslexia becoming an entrepreneur or becoming an offender probably lies very heavily with the quality of teaching they received as a youngster. And that's the point that I want to introduce the professional development framework. First of all, I'm going to show it to you, then I'm going to run through my PowerPoint presentation, partly because the PowerPoint presentation is something that you might choose to deliver in your setting. So first we'll have a look at it, then we'll have a look at the presentation as it stands. So this is it. It's very, very easy to log in. When you set up your account, it takes less than 30 seconds. You come up with your username, you create your own password, and I think you give a postcode, and then you can go straight in and do the assessments. If you were introducing it to a setting, you might choose to look at the voiceover link, which is something that's been done by Lynn Greenwald, and gives you a screenshot look at how to do the assessments. But I'm going to show you how to do that live. So what you would do is you would click on a strand. You can see that there are 6 strands, but I'll explain that a bit more in the PowerPoint. You would choose one of these, and because you're all quite a lot of experts in the audience, let's go with stage 3. You would then be able to rate your confidence, and we're a good group, so we'll go with high confidence. When you've done that, you would simply move on to the next, and then you would continue the assessment. So it's a bit like a quiz, and the point of the quiz is to assess your own skills and knowledge. So you're rating how much you know and how confident you are in that area. When you have done that, so save and exit, when you've gone through a strand, you are then able to download a complete copy of your results, and that looks like this. So here you would have all of the statements, the stage that you selected, and then your confidence rating. In addition to that, you would get a range of resources, and I'll showcase one of those in a moment. You can also download this as a PDF. So there's various routes into this. There's lots of resources, but I quite like the land material, so I'll just show you that. Visit the site, and if you were doing any kind of professional development, you've got a wealth of information here. Learning to read, assessing reading, learning to write, assessing writing, what is dyslexia, interventions for literacy, and dyscalculia. and you've got a range of, I went too fast, but it's got some rather natty graphics. I'm a bit behind the times when it comes to IT, so I just love it when someone's done it for me. So you've got some super graphics here. So this is a really nice introduction into any area related to that that you want to cover. The videos as well. And if you scroll down here, you've got skills profile worksheet, you've got miscue analysis, you've got an audio file on how to go through that process. So there's an absolute wealth of resources, and really my job today is to help you to navigate through this wealth of resources. So, snip back here. If you were showing this to a group of people, what we're going to do by September is we will have a structured worksheet. So I wouldn't expect anybody, as a result of today, to remember all the bits on the site. So you're going to be able to download a structured worksheet that will point you to the things that you would need to take a staff team through. And one of the things that we hope is that people in a school will actually go through these individually and use this as an opportunity to take responsibility for their own professional development and upskill themselves in terms of their skills and knowledge and get that personalised report. However, I also know that that is not the only route into professional development. So in a little while I'll talk to you about conducting a bespoke training event, creating an inset, and even writing your own course if you want to. But the things that I would point you to show people, the things that are on the structured worksheet, are the assessment process, the resources, because we would always encourage people to do a personalised assessment. The reason for that is that time is so precious that if you just pick up a whole load of resources, you haven't had any filter. If you do the personalised assessment, then the resources that you pick up are tailored to what you have decided you need. So we would always recommend that route. However, understanding schools, understanding busy teachers, we also know that sometimes you want specific resources and you're not going to go through that personalised assessment. So what you can do there, you can choose your stage, and I will tell you what the stages mean in a little while, but basically stage 1 is your universal stage that we'd expect all teachers and teaching assistants to know. So you'd select your stage, you would choose one of the 6 strands. Let's go with theories. And what would come up would be all the resources that relate to that stage and that strand. So you could go right in and just filter the resources and get exactly what you're looking for that way. There are other things you could do as well. If you type video into the keyword search, you will get a look at all of the videos that we have. So you can go straight into that if you wanted to. You could do the same with a word like dyscalculia. I always hope my spelling doesn't let me down when I have such a public audience. So that's all the resources that we'd have for dyscalculia. I also use it as a shortcut because there's a couple of things on here that could be really useful if you're interested in school development and school improvement. So if you typed in mapping, I spelled something wrong, there we go. Then a lot of work has been done on mapping various other criteria against the strands of the professional development framework. So we've mapped all of the professional development framework statements against the criteria for dyslexia-friendly schools, and I will show you that. We've also mapped it against the ATS standards, ANDA, and SASC, and it's been reverse mapped. And really one of the important things about this is to show that it links well with other frameworks within this sector. I just want to show you this one, because if somebody wants to go down the route of dyslexia-friendly schools, it's a really big task. So what the framework will do is it will give you a bit of a stepping stone in order to achieve that. So you'd cover some of the professional development requirements, and then you'd be able to move to the other requirements for your whole school provision. So I'll just give you a little bit of a look. I hope. Okay. Well, what you can see is that this statement here in strand A, stage 1, be aware of the impact of English as an additional language on learning and literacy, that corresponds to some extent with criteria 2.1 of the British Dyslexia Association Dyslexia Friendly Quality Mark. So you've got a little bit of an overlap. And the reason we've done it in traffic lights is green means clearly that there's an exact match, amber is when they are related, and red is when there isn't a crossover, which is what you'd expect, because when you're looking at whole school provision, there might be advice on how to structure a classroom, but that's not going to link specifically to professional development. The other thing that I like about this is that in the interest of transparency, all of our statements across all 6 strands for all 5 stages are available to download. So there is nothing to stop anyone downloading this as a document, taking this roadmap of skills and knowledge and constructing their own courses from it. In fact, we'd encourage people to do that if they're going to go down the route of constructing courses. People like Dyslexia Action and OCR have evaluated existing courses and structured new courses using the framework standards or the framework statements as a criteria against which to map that. So we're seeing this as quite a broad-based, quite a collaborative roadmap of what you would expect to know and what you would expect your staff to know. There's one other thing that I want to show you. Okay, I think this is a straightforward close. Yeah. Going back to resources, in the interests of collaborative learning, there are several things that you can do. You can actually upload your own resources to the site. So if you have something that you think is really fantastic for professional development, you can share that with the nation by uploading it, selecting your resource type. Is it an activity? Is it a book? Is it an online resource? And you can submit it. Then what we will do is we'll look at your resource and we'll decide where to place it. Is it for teachers? Is it for specialist teachers? Is it language and literacy? Is it theories? Some cases it might be 2 or 3 of the strands. So we would really encourage you to log on and upload stuff that you think is really exciting. Because in terms of professional development, I'm never going to know everything that's out there. So your input would be gratefully received. The other thing that you can do is, if you really like a resource, let's pick that one, you can add it to favourites, but you could also share it with somebody. So you could just stick their email address in there and they can have that module for themselves. So it really is about sharing, and it is all free. The only instances when it's not free is if we recommend a book or a journal article, because obviously they're not free intrinsically, but the point is that this is a free resource. We also have a schools page and a framework users guide. I'm not going to show you those simply because we're updating it. So when you log on in September, hopefully you'll log on before then, but by September we're going to have a new home page and we're going to have 4 buttons, one for primary schools, one for secondary, one for FEHE and one for teacher training. So that's just to make the in-row just a little bit easier. I think that is the most important part of the site to show you. So I'm just going to get rid of that, activate my presentation. Nope. And one of my pet hates is doing this in public because suddenly my brain and hand refuses to connect. So, slideshow. And there we go. What I'm hoping, or what I'm very willing, is if there are any elements of this that's going to be useful to you in your setting, be my guest. There are already 2 PowerPoints on the framework site, so if you need to do any kind of inset on the phonics screening check or theories of dyslexia, on the schools page are 2 PowerPoint presentations. You are free to download and use them. No copyright implications, they are just ready to go. So, what is the framework? We've had a look at that. And how can it support you in supporting colleagues? Or, if you're a specialist teacher, you might want to broaden your self-employment and you might want to offer courses to various groups of people. And this would also be really suitable for that as well. And we have really worked hard on versatility. That's why help with navigation, I think, is quite important. So what is it? And I'm thinking that if you're in a school setting, sometimes you might need to present to a senior leadership team. So it's quite handy to have this ready to go so that you can say, this is what it is, this is what it's about. It's a free online tool, funded by the DFE in conjunction with the Dyslexia-SpLD Trust. I'm just going to explain the SpLD. I know everybody in the room will know that that stands for specific learning difficulties. It's actually the bane of my life because it is such a mouthful, particularly when I have to talk about the Literacy and Dyslexia-SpLD Professional Development Framework. However, I blame Lynn Greenwald of Pathos for this, and in many ways I do actually agree with her, but what she was trying to do was to move people away from this very narrow view of what dyslexia is. And the number of times we've heard other teachers say, well, yeah, I know he has dyslexia, but he's so disorganised, it's like he doesn't care, he never comes in with the right books. And we want to say, no, that's part of the co-occurring difficulties. So, bane of my life, but actually I think she's right to try and get that message across. The project itself has been run by a conjunction between Dyslexia Action and Pathos. And as we've seen, it's both a portal to access resources and gives you that personalised needs analysis. Covers 6 key strands of essential expertise. The sharp-eyed amongst you will have spotted my deliberate typo. And it includes 5 stages corresponding to a variety of roles within the workforce. Just in case you thought that we might have just constructed this roadmap over a couple of glasses of wine on a Friday night, we didn't. It's been very much a stakeholder collaboration. The whole idea, and this actually came from the Rose Review, but the whole idea was to produce something that was a collaboration and agreed roadmap of skills and knowledge. And for those of you who like to see things in a more visual way, those were the people we collaborated with. Also, that's only the first stage. Those are the people we collaborated with in terms of constructing the strands and the statement. Since then, we've collaborated with a wide variety of schools. We've done case studies. We've worked with local authorities like Norfolk and Newham. We've had stakeholder feedback. So actually, the collaboration picture is even broader than that. But we're not trying to sell you something that's just some quirky little thing developed by a couple of minds. You've seen the 6 strands, but for me, if you're doing early professional development, just showing people the 6 key areas is already a form of professional development. So you've got your development of language and literacy, you have your theories, identification and assessment, supporting and teaching learners, communicating, working with others, and professional development. So you can already see the breadth of knowledge that is needed to support the dyslexic learner appropriately. These are the stages. Stage 1 we would consider to be universal, and this would be quality first teaching and wave 1 provision. Stages 2 and 3 would be the equivalent of wave 2 provision. So that's when pupils need a bit more than can be done within a good classroom. Sort of maybe small group interventions, reading schemes, that kind of thing. Stage 4 and 5 are likely to be for those youngsters who need wave 3 provision, which is increasingly specialist. You've seen that, but the reason I picked out these two statements, is that if you're working with a staff team, I think there are a number of schools or groups of people that would think that they didn't know the difference between a biological theory and a cognitive theory and a social interaction theory. And one of the ways in which I'd encourage people to use this would be to project the framework up on the board and get people to discuss each statement as a group. Because what would happen then is that the knowledgeable person in the group would say, oh yeah, you know that. The biological theories are the genetic links, the brain scan evidence that we have, and some of the chromosome evidence, so anything to do with the physicality. The cognitive theories are what you're probably most comfortable with. That's your phonological decoding, working memory, short-term verbal memory, processing issues. So those would be your cognitive theories. Social interaction theory is looking at the social versus medical model of disability. And that would be aligned with the view that if we were a hunter-gatherer society, then dyslexia wouldn't show at all because you wouldn't be doing any simple decoding. So all you would need in a group of people would be for somebody to say that, and everyone else would go, oh yeah, right, no, I do know that. And so instead of somebody as an individual rating themselves as low, as a result of the collaborative peer-to-peer discussion, then you might find that they're rating themselves medium to high. Very much the same with the simple view of reading. All of you, I know you know about it because we discussed it this morning, but it's a really useful one. If you were doing any parent engagement, then looking at the simple view of reading is interesting but accessible. So it's a nice one as a kind of a starter activity, and I will show you the resources that pertain to that in a moment. So, if you go through the statements, you will get your in-depth report, which will include CPD and development advice. You'll get feedback on the level that you rated yourself. You get suggestions for workplace activities, professional development resources, websites, key reference documents, and not only advice on how to select a relevant training course, but by September you will also be able to see live courses that are being run by Dyslexia Action, PATOS, and other organisations. So the whole point of going through the personalised process is that yes, you get your printout, you get your resources, but you'll also see what courses are available to you as well. So these are examples of resources that are recommended, and I put them on here because if you were introducing this to your setting, it's quite handy to just squeeze in a little bit of dyslexia knowledge as well. So that's why I've done that. Also, when you get this email to you, then these are all live links, so they're all going to be available to you as well. So, an extract from the Rose Review chapter, and this is what I think is nice, because if you were designing a course, if you had to do an insert, then you might be thinking, well, which definition should I use? Now, there's lots of ways you can think about dyslexia, but using the framework will point you to one that is nationally recognised. So this is taken from the Rose Report, that yes, dyslexia is a learning difficulty. It primarily affects the skills involved in accurate and fluent word reading and spelling, that the characteristics are related to phonological awareness, verbal memory, verbal processing speed, and you are likely to have co-occurring difficulties. So if you are presenting a course, really this is about not reinventing the wheel. So there's a lot of stuff here that's ready to go that you can just pick up and use in your setting without having to trawl through any number of sites in order to find what you want. Simple view of reading. I'm just going to show it to you. I'm showing off it's not my own graphics, but it's quite nice. And I know we talked about it earlier, but your y-axis here is your comprehension, and word recognition here is to do with the decoding skills. So that would be your classic good reader. Fantastic decoding skills and really good comprehension. So that would be your classic good reader. This is somebody who's really struggling with reading, likely to have moderate to severe learning difficulties, but they're struggling with the decoding and they're struggling with the comprehension. This one here is the quadrant that you would place most dyslexics. So the decoding is a struggle, but the comprehension is normally stronger. However, I've got one really big caveat to that. When you're moving into more sophisticated texts, particularly in key stage, you only need to misread one or two keywords in a paragraph and you're going to totally derail the comprehension. So I think it's a bit glib to say, well, can't decode, but the comprehension is okay. I think there comes a point when the inability to decode has quite a serious impact on comprehension. And finally, this is the one that we heard a lot about this morning, but children, particularly on the autistic spectrum, who can decode beautifully. But actually you could give them a nonsense word, like in toe by toe perhaps, and they'd decode that beautifully too, but they're not getting the comprehension from it. And I know you've heard a lot about autism, but I just want to share this snippet with you because I think it's interesting. When researchers want to look at the way in which children with autism struggle with central coherence, they're really good at all the detail, but they find it quite hard to put it together in a meaningful way. One of the ways you can assess that and look at that is to think about homographs. So that's words that look the same but are pronounced differently, like tear and tear. So if you give a child a sentence to read like, it was a very sad movie, so she had a tear in her eye, the child who is not getting the overall sense of meaning is quite likely to read it as, she had a tear in her eye. So if you hear somebody misreading in that sort of sense, you might be alerted to the fact that they're decoding quite nicely, but they're not actually bringing the comprehension and the meaning to the surface. This is a framework for understanding dyslexia. If you're interested in the differences between the theories, this is a really nice resource. So I'm not going to belabor that point, but if you were doing some inset, doing some CPD, this is quite a nice way to go. It's quite interesting to have a look at. I'm a bit of a fan of dyscalculia. I find it really interesting, so that's why I selected this resource. But it's available to you, at any time that you want. So, how could you use the framework? One of the ways is simply to introduce it to your setting, because the framework is intended to be an instrument for professional development on its own. So in theory, you could introduce it to a group of people, they could do their self-assessments, they could get their recommended resources, and they could upskill themselves without any further contact. However, we know that we learn well in groups, so what you could also do is encourage people, either staff, or if you were setting up courses, you could encourage people who are coming on your course to go through the personalised assessment, give you the results, then you would know what their gaps in knowledge were, and then you can target your course to those gaps in knowledge. So you're moving away from something generic and getting something bespoke. In terms of creating an inset, you can either do that in a bespoke way, or, something that I just lightly mentioned, you can get the framework up on the screen. And this is something that I trialled in a school in Tooting. But when you get the framework up and you get people debating what they know, what they think about in terms of each statement, then you end up with a really rich learning activity. So you can do it as a whole group exercise and just get people chatting through what they think and where they would rate themselves. What you could do after that is suggest that people take it of one resource each and then maybe feedback in a while, a couple of months later. Something else that I've done, we've been doing, is working with some cluster schools. But the Greenwood Dale Academies ran a Train the Trainer event, which I coordinated. And what they've done is that all the Senkos have taken that away, and they are writing a school improvement plan, which they're coming back in September to feedback exactly where they want to go within their schools. And this is what I really like about this. You can use it to structure an inset, but you can use it to think about strategic improvement and really push that forward and roll it out over, in a more sustained way. So it really is about versatility. You can write your own course too. You can download all the statements and you can say, all right, I'm going to do a course on theories, or I'm going to do a course on supporting and teaching, and I've got all the strands of knowledge that I ought to have in my course. You could pick it up and take it away and do that. You are entirely free to do that, and there is no charge. So, introducing the framework to others, there's Lynn's introduction, and there's also, I hesitate to say, but there is a voiced over PowerPoint presentation that I did. Clearly, I can't bear to listen to it because I can't bear my voice sounding like that. But if you would prefer just to put something up as a video, there are two ways of doing that. Either you get a presentation or you can get a snapshot as to how to do the assessments. We will also be uploading some training materials so that you can access those. I've spoken about the structured worksheet. I'm also going to do a treasure hunt, so it's a little bit of fun. It won't suit every setting, but if you have people in front of you with laptops, you could have a bit of a race. It says things like, go to strand B, question 4, what's the first word? And it's just a fun way of navigating around the site. So those will be available, so will the PowerPoints. Talked about that. Yep, talked about teachers doing the assessment and about doing the group profile. What we are hoping is that if you do it as a group, that we can number crunch it for you, so you'll be able to get on one sheet of paper where the gaps were in that group. So that's something that we hope will be coming through in September. Talked about that. So using the personalised results to target identified gaps in knowledge. The other thing that you can do is use the resources that are recommended. So yes, you know where the gaps are, but you've also got the resources to hand, so you can go straight to them rather than analysing the gaps yourself. So that's another route. On the schools page, I've talked a little bit about how you create an inset. In the Framework Users Guide, this is actually a lot more detailed, and I've looked more at school development plans and doing action research within a school setting. So again, there's a kind of a lighter option and then a more in-depth option as well, so you can have a play and decide what's going to suit you and your setting. And we've talked about that. So the only thing I would add is if you're using the statements to stimulate team dialogue, you would need, maybe not something as grand as this, but you would need to be able to project it onto a screen. You'd need at least an hour. And my suggestion would be to do one strand per term. And that would be your insets covered for the next 2 years. Ready-made. You know, can't argue with that, can you? The only thing I would add here is beware of vulnerable expertise, because sometimes as a group you might have one person who's really knowledgeable, but you wouldn't want to rate the whole group as level 3, highly confident, because if that person left, then the knowledge in your setting would drop dramatically. So I would just be a bit aware of that if you did that. Okay. And we've talked about writing your own course. Some people have used it to benchmark progress. So teachers or newly qualified teachers, or if you're running a course, it can be quite useful. The Institute of Education has done this, but you can benchmark knowledge before and after the course has been undertaken. That can be quite useful. We also hope that that can be emphasised in new software, where if you take the assessments again, it'll show you where you were previously and where you've come. So you're going to end up with one document and you can showcase your progress if you want to do that. Talked really about that. Really good for NQTs, really good for mentoring new colleagues, doing action research or running training events, or pursuing the dyslexia-friendly school. So again, that sense of versatility. So, I just want to show you a tiny bit about what impact this might have. We have lots of qualitative data, lots of comments about what people think and how they're going to use it. This is one of my favourite. I'm not going to read it to you, but it was really nice that people felt that it fitted their setting. But it's quite nice to have number data as well. So we commissioned the Institute of Education to do some research for us, and they discovered that when people use the framework, their their confidence and their stages improve. So you are getting that documented effect. And from my perspective, even more powerful than that, you're getting an impact on how people then teach. So that's an 80% increase in people's understanding of theory, 43% in terms of the use of visuals, again 43% in terms of a multisensory approach. And I really like this because if you start a lesson with something that's multisensory or visual, then you're engaging all learners. I've never met a non-dyslexic learner who didn't like a multisensory starter. So actually it does go across the board. 50% found an increase in person-centred approach and looking at learning styles, thinking about how the learner learns. And 36% did more with task analysis. And that's really about breaking down a task and thinking about how it might impact on somebody with perhaps working memory difficulties. So if it's a maths problem, then if you've got 22 times 4, then, or say 23 times 4, then someone's got to have the place value, understand that the 23 is 2 lots of 10 and the 3 relates to the units. Then they've got to decode the multiplication symbol. Then they've got to remember what number they had and what procedure they were meant to use. So even something that seems relatively simple, if you actually analyse it, can be quite complex for anybody with SEN or dyslexia. So who's it for? Finally, it's for the individual, it's for inclusion managers or SENCOs, lead schools, local authorities, CPD leaders and training providers. And that is more or less it from me. The framework can be accessed from here. The Framework User's Guide is a really meaty document and I'd encourage you to look at it. I can be contacted here, so I'm always interested in hearing from people. And in particular at the moment we're rolling out Train the Trainer programs. So if you're in a cluster of schools or a cluster of specialist teachers or a local authority, then I'd be interested in some partnership work. The Train the Trainer program is free for appropriate partnerships. That's it from me. So thank you very much.